Hey everyone, welcome back to the BizBlend Podcast. I'm your host, and as always, we talk a lot on this show about innovation, disruption, all those buzzwords that get thrown around in tech, startups, businesses. But today, we are going to dive into an industry that most of us only interact with maybe once or twice in our lives, or maybe very few times, if we are lucky or unlucky, depending on your experience. I'm talking about construction. Here's the thing: when was the last time you heard someone rave about their contractor? When did you last hear a neighbor say, "Oh my God, my renovation came in on budget, on time, and I actually trusted the people doing the work"? Yeah, exactly. It almost never happens. Construction industry, listeners, has a reputation problem. Cost overruns, surprise fees, ghosting contractors, projects, many more. We'll discuss that in the conversation. But these drag on for months longer than promised. It is an industry that for decades has operated on handshake deals, vague estimates, and a whole lot of crossed fingers. And for homeowners, that means stress, uncertainty, and a nagging feeling that you are getting taken advantage of. So, what happens? Just imagine this, listeners. What happens when someone decides to flip that script entirely? What does it look like to build a construction business where transparency isn't just a marketing term, but it's actually the foundation of everything you do? Today's guest, Gil Vaisman, founder and CEO of Go ADU Construction in Los Angeles. He specializes in ADUs, accessory dwelling units, the additional living spaces on your property that have become a lifeline in the housing crisis. Again, in the conversation, we'll definitely explore that. But more than that, he has built a vertically integrated, white glove business model that takes all the chaos out of construction. So, we'll definitely explore, listeners. Is this actually scalable, or is it just a premium service for a niche market? Can you really eliminate friction in an industry built on friction? And what does it cost, both financially, operationally, to run a business where you promise certainty in an uncertain world? So, with that, listeners, let's get into this interesting conversation. And Gil, welcome to BizBlend. I'm really glad that you're here.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me. Love the intro. So I'm looking forward to getting into this.
Thank you so much. Lots of things to explore here, Gil, in such a short period of time. But I hope we definitely do a good job for our listeners, because if we address the elephant in the room, I mean, the construction industry has operated a certain way for decades, like vague estimates, and then sometimes timelines which are not matching, subcontractors who don't show up. I mean, it's almost like, expected. We have kind of normalized this. So I have to ask you, how is this possible? Like guaranteed pricing, eliminate customer friction. How is it even possible? What are you doing differently that every other contractor isn't?
So great question. And I believe the key here is I look at it from a point of view of how do you run a business instead of how do you most my background comes from entrepreneurship and actually storytelling. So
Okay.
I, my formation is in film school. I learned how to produce films, and a film and an ADU are not that different. You need a set of plans. You need a script.
Hmm.
You need a production design. You need a material takeoff. And then you need certain departments. You need art department. You need drywall. You need editing. You need finishes. And so when you look at it from like how does Hollywood run itself, and try to apply that knowledge that I've acquired into the construction world. uh, I think I started seeing a lot of pain points and understanding why they happen. And once you understand why projects go over budget and over time, you start seeing ways to solve it. And I'd love to get into the nitty gritty. I don't know how long we have for that, but your typical contractor is someone that started with a hammer and some nails, working as a carpenter, and has scaled up and knows how to build and knows how to craft a good product, but has no knowledge of running a business, and has no knowledge of logistics, and has no knowledge of profit and losses, and a balance sheet and cash flow statement. And I'm going to say most problems that happen in the construction industry have to do with cash flow.
Okay. Okay. So I think it's one of the fundamental problems here, cash flow, because um like it's a operationally heavy industry, and I believe this is something that is somehow missed out here or kind of ignored here, like about the systemization or controlling the variables or the cash flow here, the business, the fundamentals of business. So yeah, that makes sense actually here.
Yeah, because sorry to interrupt you for a second there, but like your typical contractor is saying yes to most things that they can take over. They run over capacity. They're not estimating properly. Their margins aren't there. And in a competitive landscape where people are trying to bid for the lowest, like that's where you end up with most of the problems we see. And it's a systemic issue.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. It is. And actually, I was about to say, like, you can actually give more and more information on this because I believe that this has been a problem that, once again, I would say very much normalized or accepted. Like, why hasn't it been figured out yet already? Why there hasn't been any solution?
They're I'm not. I don't want to sound like I'm blaming the client or the culture, but like we've normalized kind of bidding for the low bid.
Okay.
We've normalized kind of like a race to the bottom of finding the cheapest bid out there. And that cheapest bid, knowingly, maybe because they're bad actors and are bit and are considering creating surprises down the future to make the margins that they need, or unknowingly just by poor estimation, and they run into a position where the money that they're owed is not going to cover the money that they still need to spend on the project, and so they drop it. That ends up happening a lot. So uh, the good actors are incompetent, being not knowing how to estimate well and underestimate the cost and the duration. And the bad actors are just knowingly giving low bids, knowing that they will rely on change orders to make the difference in profit margin.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. And Gil, moving on, like one thing that I actually um personally I'm very curious to explore. I'm very sure our listeners also would be vertical integration, like because it's key to your model. Like you are doing design, permitting. Like you gave the example of the Hollywood and the movie industry. Like there are so many verticals involved here. It's not just only the production, not the sets or not the actors, not the editing, but it's like a symphony of all the verticals here. No, so you are doing design, you're doing permitting, engineering, construction, like all in house. And most contractors outsource a lot of that. So why did you decide to bring everything under one roof? And more importantly, like how do you manage that operationally?
So the management is difficult, but through delegation, I say I manage most of it. You rely on people that are professional, that are
Yeah.
experts on their field, that are self-sufficient, and then it's coordination between the parties. Like we start a design with a certain scope of work with certain limitations. We know we can't build 4-story structure. We know we need to be under a certain height, under certain square feet. And within those limitations, which are budgetary limitations, because we signed the contract with a guaranteed price, each project gets limited in scope, and that's what allows us to stay on budget. If the if the client decides they want something bigger or to change it, then it gets communicated to our project manager, and we let the client know, like, this is not what we discussed. It might be outside of your scope of work, and we discuss everything ahead of time to
Mhm.
avoid the prices and to avoid running into going over budget or over time. Like you contracted a 500 square foot 1 bedroom, and all of a sudden we're designing for a 900 square foot 2 bedroom. We're gonna take a time out and discuss it uh, and let the client know. So when everything is integrated under one roof, we're able to pivot and meet the client where they're at.
Hmm. Hmm. I have actually two questions from here, but to begin with, like let's dig into the flip side of this. Like when you vertically integrate, I mean, you're also all taking on all of the overhead costs here. Like you are paying salaries for designers, engineers, then construction crews, like all full time. I'm assuming. Um, but then if you look at the traditional contractors, like they keep their costs variable by outsourcing. Um, I mean, they only pay for what they need on per project basis, like case to case, project to project. So, what happens during a slow period, Gil? Like, how do you keep those teams busy and profitable when the pipeline slows down?
So we've been very conservative in our growth, meaning we started outsourcing as well, and we just started um like we never raised capital. We we do take profit. Uh, we reinvest in the business conservatively, and when we just grow as a result of accounts receivable. If our accounts receivable allow us to take into an extra investment, then we'll take onto it. Other than that, we'd rather pay extra and not take that step. So, like I make very carefully managed decisions every time. Like we hire someone, it's because we know we have the capacity to take on that price. And once you're able to take on someone in house, your costs go down immediately by
Mm.
20-30%.
Okay. Okay. So it's kind of a very streamlined way of, because I mean you're managing so many verticals at the same time, and I'm very sure it's challenging, but I think that is something the purpose here is not only the disruption but actually catering, addressing to the exact pain points, whether it's on the contractors end or at the customers end, like an industrial level. So yeah, it does make sense. And another factor that is trust, because when we look at such industries, I mean, these industries, they are directly, facing customers every day. And the construction industry does have a trust problem here. I think everyone listening would agree. In fact, I also agree. I mean, it depends on countries to countries and geographies to geographies. But then, um, you know, trust, it is built over time, reputation, word of mouth, and the local, I think the strength of local, the community based or in a specific town is something that, we cannot ignore in an industry like construction. So, um, how do you actually earn the trust with a new customer who would be probably skeptical from day one that this is too good to be true, like this kind of solution?
Well, there's a level of education that has to happen, and I'm gonna say not everybody's ready to take on this list, but part of it is we want something fast, we want something cheap, and we want something good. And I know where my value proposition is, and I know that in order to be reliable with the good quality, um, I cannot be the cheapest. Like, and so I'm making a lot of assumptions when I make an estimate, and I need to be able to cover all my bases, and that gets reflected in a price that is upfront a little higher than what other people promise. But that's where the part of education comes, where it says no change orders, guaranteed pricing. This is a number you can rely on. You don't need to keep another 20% in the bank just in case. This is going to cover all your project costs. And it's difficult because we're clashing against everybody kind of assumes you need 10-20% extra budget for unforeseen issues when you go into a construction project. It's kind of like the culture, but I'm trying to to be the guy that finishes on budget, on time, and I have the client testimonials to prove that it's possible to do it. It's just going to cost you a little extra upfront. That's the bit of bad news.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think that is something, um, I also find, I connect with that because, um, it's not just the value of the time invested. Mm, Of course, the time, the value of time invested, and the quality of the work, but then the expertise here as well. Like, how all of these, uh, areas or different aspects in a particular service, all of these are integrated, streamlined with a specific time limit, like a more refined way of looking at something as volatile and as chaotic as in construction industry. And sometimes it can be very, very challenging for accepting that, something like this can have a significant financial value here. And I think that's why not only system, not only at the industry level, I think the changes have to happen at both the ends. Um, and it's going to definitely take some time, Gil. But what do you, as a future, like in future of the construction industry, specifically when we are seeing, such volatile economic uh, dynamics in economics? So what kind of future do you see here? And do you hope that it's going to change?
I do think it's gonna take. It's hard to talk about the industry as a whole because um it's still the skills to be a good builder and the skills to be a good businessman
Mm.
uh, are not complementary. So
Yeah.
um,
That's right.
it's hard for so. like, I think it's in partnerships. You have to kind of, um, piecemeal it, and that's where the vertical integration is key, like you take someone that is great at building, but you need to complement those skills with someone that is great at management and at logistics and at running a business. And I do see companies that like get it. I do see um certain construction companies that like accept it, but like we're catering maybe to 20% of the industry that are ready to hear the music, or people that have been burned enough through previous experiences. But like most people are going to build once, and they're going to be burned. And they're going to have a negative experience, and it's going to take more than just me out there to change the way the industry works. And um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it it it's ready to be disrupted or to have a big power, because the scalability also is very difficult.
Mhm.
Uh, it it's not like I'm limited in how much I can scale. I cannot take on 100 projects maintaining the quality that I do. Like something's got to give. So um, like all I can say is like you got to be careful with the contractors you pick, and you got to be careful um, with who you work with at the end of the day. And I don't have this super positive message at the end that like everything is gonna be good with like Rosie. Like I honestly think it's gonna take a lot of years and a lot of people being burned. And that unfortunately, like this is kind of like an engagement ring, like you buy an engagement ring once in your life. You don't interact with
Right.
that much.
No, I love that. I really appreciate that, you are you have addressed this consciously, because it's very easy to overcome it or oversell or over like everything, put a fluff into this and see everything through rose colored glasses. It's not, uh, I mean, for people who actually been through, as you mentioned, like completely burned out, had negative experiences, I think anything that even genuinely wants to give a good solution, but then it kind of portrays itself that, this is going to change everything. Now the future looks very, very good. I think it will be difficult for digesting that kind of message. So I really appreciate that you actually addressed this consciously. And uh, I think, we can systemize a lot, but then construction is ultimately a human business. Like, it's people who are swinging hammers, pouring concrete, talking to inspectors. I mean, this is a game of, not game, but it's dynamics of trust, relationship, um, handling, managing everything. And I think at some point your growth is limited by how many good people you can actually hire and train. So makes sense, Gil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Like, yeah, it's the candid answer, not the like not the
PR driven answer.
yeah. I'm trying to speak with candor.
No, that's good. That's good, actually. Gil, before we wrap it up, I think it's too quick to wrap it up, but one that particular something that I actually mentioned in the intro is the ADUs here. Like you have built this business around ADUs, um, marketed as solution to the housing crisis. But then people who can afford to build an ADU on their property, they're already homeowners, often in expensive markets in LA, like LA.
Yeah.
So you are helping people who already have like a head start here. have wealth, generate more wealth, either through like, rental income or increased property value. So isn't this just making the rich richer while doing very little for the people who actually can't afford housing?
Um, just ADUs by itself is not gonna solve the housing crisis in Red Lake. It's a much more complex problem. The key is economics of supply and demand. There is a limited supply and a growing demand traditionally, and ADUs are part of the solution, but it cannot be the only measurement to solve it. We do need affordable housing. The problem with development is that it's more profitable to build for the top of the market rather than the bottom of the market. So if I'm a developer, I have $1 million to invest in the market in LA. Um, I'm gonna go and try to build a house that I can sell for multiple millions, but it's really not gonna move the needle in terms of the housing prices. There need to be more financial incentives to build bigger apartment buildings for them to be profitable. And those usually also start as luxury buildings. And it's a really slow trickle down effect until those, because now apartments that were newer in the 80s and 90s now are affordable. But it takes decades for that trickle down effect. While ADUs like offer an immediate um, release, it's like a release valve of the pressure of the high demand. You are creating where there used to be one house, now you can put one, two, three, four houses. And so like that does make a dent when you look at the global economics, and the rent prices in LA have been stabilizing. So it's a step in the right direction. It's not the only steps, but I think the politicians are aware of that. There's too much NIMBY opposition, not in my backyard. Um, Strict zoning laws here in LA that like have created this sea of single family homes. And the more apartment buildings, the more density we start seeing in our city, the more we're gonna be able to have like I see cities like when I was traveling in Tokyo, uh, they have very lax zoning rules. You can build anything anywhere, like not exactly, but if there's a lot, you can build a four-story building there, and uh, for such a big, bustling metropole, housing is more affordable than in LA. So it being able to live in a more diverse neighborhood with more apartments and more apartment buildings where there used to be houses, and getting used to that idea that like we cannot have a sea of single family homes, that's going to be the only solution long term for our housing crisis.
Hmm. That's what something we are seeing actually if we talk about India as well. I think the concept of single family houses, it was more like, like in US, people talk about the American dream, like here in India also. Like most of the single family houses, standalone houses, they have been already built during the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s. But right now, what we're seeing is in terms of demand, uh, the apartments or the flat systems, that's what we call it here,
Yeah.
the societies with all the amenities in there. So yeah, I think it's once again, as you mentioned, a game of supply and demand. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm all for public housing as well, but
Mhm.
we need hundreds of thousands of new units in the LA market. Like we need a big change in order to change things. And I do think ADUs are a step in the right direction.
Mm, makes sense. Makes sense. Great. And also, in terms of the sustainability, how you mentioned about scalability here is quite challenging. If you do want to scale, let's assume, like how do you do that, without breaking everything that makes your model work? Is it even possible?
No, but like I think the capacity is what it is. The market is capped as well. Like it, um, it's a very competitive market with a lot of bidders. Every remodeler is doing ABUs now. We are ABU specialists. We don't do remodels. We just specialize in this one thing. So we do have a competitive advantage, but more there with the amount of competition, like getting a bigger piece of the pie, it's challenging on its own. So if I ever get to that problem where we don't have the capacity to convert all of our all of our contracts, I'll cross that bridge there. But like I doubt I'll get to that point, if I'm honest with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a
Yeah,
hypothetical. It's a hypothetical.
hypothetical. Yeah, exactly. That's the word I was actually thinking about. And I think sometimes the right move is to um, grow slowly, because once again, especially in a competitive market like tech, construction, and other industries as well, similar industries, there's always this, everything initially it looks good on paper. The business starts with a good intention, but then it ends up looking like, everyone else. Um, so I think here the right move is to grow slowly or not at all. I mean, it means protecting the sanctity, protecting the essence of what you have built. Like, it's not the typical Silicon Valley grow at all costs mentality here.
Correct. Absolutely. 100% agree with you there. The enough is enough.
But that's what super. Again, on that, I think, yeah, I do feel guilty because this is such a fascinating, such an important, for some people it can be boring because I think there's yet a lot of importance yet to be given to something as basic as construction. Though yeah, people talk about housing, but then what exactly happens, the behind the scene and everything. Like it's a fascinating world out there. So I really appreciate that, in such a short period of time, you uh, gave us a glimpse into that with the much needed practicality. Um, and of course, some of the questions were actually harder. And it's genuinely impressive. So thank you so much for this refreshing take.
No, no, no. Thank you, Sana. Like, really appreciate the opportunity to share with your audience. Questions were on point, and I'm glad I could discuss this with you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely enjoyed this discussion here, Gil, and listeners. I hope you did as well. Because I think the bigger takeaway here, at least what I realize, is that when it comes to industry disruption, it doesn't always mean you have to scale to like $1 billion or become a household name. Sometimes it can mean doing something really well for a specific customer in a specific market and being okay with that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gil, but I think it's not trying to reinvent construction everywhere, but you are trying to make it work better, let's say with one city for one specific type of project for customers who actually value transparency and certainty. So I think it's a very focused approach, a laser focused approach to begin with. So yeah, that's what I'm taking away.
Yeah, that is true. Like, I'm not out there to conquer the world. I live in a market where I believe there is enough to prosper. It's a huge market,
Yeah.
and like if I get a a decent piece of the pie in my market. For a while, this won't last forever as well. Like at some point, uh, every house will have an ADU, and I'll have to pivot. This might have 10 years maybe of being a thing, and then we'll have to pivot and do something else. But like in the meantime, I'm hoping to make the best out of like make the lemonade that I can from my lemons, and and do things the only way that I know how to do them.
Exactly, exactly. Ah, love that. I love that. And listeners, that is powerful. That is powerful. Um, and I think the truth here is most industries that don't get disrupted by the massive platforms of or massive VCs backed unicorns. Sometimes they get disrupted by people who actually care enough to do the hard, boring work of building systems, earning trust, and delivering on promises. And that is not sexy, but it is real. So if you are thinking about building a business, or if you are frustrated with the way an industry operates, maybe the lesson here isn't to go big, it's to go deep. Find the thing that's broken, fix it for a small group of people, and do it so well that they can't imagine going back to the old way. So, thank you to everyone for tuning into this episode. And Gil, if our listeners, especially founders, entrepreneurs, if they want to get some wisdom from you, or if they have their thoughts, their opinions to share with you, how they can reach out to you.
Yeah, it's easy to reach me. I'm available in pretty much every single social media platform. I just started another company called Weisman Construction. So goedu.com, Weisman Construction. You can Google my name, Gil Vaisman, and you can DM me on Instagram, find me on LinkedIn. Um, and I'm always happy. I always try to make time for people that are just um, curious to pick my brain.
Of course, of course. And listeners, what I'm going to do, as I always do it for you, I have all the links in the show notes. Find them attached along with this episode. And yeah, thank you once again. And if this episode connected with you in any way, or if you do not agree, if you agree, share it with someone who's ever complained about a contractor, which is basically everyone. Leave us a review, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on BizBlend, where we are blending business strategy and real talk. Thank you.
Thank you.